Doing this one simple thing is like eliminating 6 pounds of gear from your back. I woke up and wanted to rage bait the ultra lightweight backpacking trolls today, so I'm just gonna come out and say it. I don't have a sub 10-pound base weight, and I am an ultra lightweight backpacker. Welcome to another episode of Backpacking Hot Takes. I'm Meg Atterbury, an ex-professional outdoor writer and current outdoor educator, and today I'm diving into the world of ultralight backpacking. Does a 10-pound base weight actually enable you to hike further and spend less energy? That's the big question we're gonna dive into today. And we are diving deep. I put on my journalism pants. I read a 200-page book, browsed scientific studies done by the military, and brushed up on my middle school algebra to give you the inside scoop on what actually makes a difference in your ability to hike big mile days. Ultralight or UL backpacking doesn't have an official definition. There is no official standard or governing board telling you what is or isn't ultralight. Ultralight's current consensus is that you have a base weight of 10 pounds or less. Base weight is the weight of all of your gear minus your food, fuel, and water. Unsurprisingly, also has a reputation of coming with a pretty steep price tag and a consumerism cult-like quality. The biggest war cry of ultralight is that hiking with as little weight as possible enables you to hike further and faster without using as much energy. So that $800 DCF tent is the reason you can pull off 20-mile days. But that's not entirely true. In fact, your pack weight matters a lot less than you think it does. And the secret to big mile days? It's got nothing to do with gear at all. Huh? Even I was shocked by the results here. However, before I get going, because I know folks have strong internet opinions on this topic, I'm going to simply say this: hike your own hike. I don't care what kind of backpacker you are, and nature doesn't care if you're carrying a chair and camp shoes or you just pass out on the ground after a long day where you stand. None of it really matters. What does matter is your personal enjoyment you get out of the outdoors, and you're respecting and taking care of the environments you love to recreate in. So now with that out of the way, let's get going. There are two important studies to understand when it comes to how to reduce fatigue and log big miles into your day. And as always, you can get all the math, studies, and details in the show notes down below. In the 1970s, the Pandolf equation was developed. Essentially, it uses math to calculate calories burned based on a few important factors: your body weight, pack weight, hiking speed, grade or incline, and something called the terrain factor, which personally I'd rename to the suck factor because it measures everything from walking on pavement to hiking in a swamp. Ooh. It also is important to note that these numbers aren't perfectly accurate. For example, elevation isn't considered in this equation, and creating a formula to measure everybody perfectly is a pretty tough ask in the world of science. However, if we assume that the standard deviation or inaccuracy range of this formula is the same, since we're comparing ourselves to ourselves, we can use this as a broader discussion about what really impacts your ability to hike far. I'll save you the very nerdy breakdown of this middle school algebra formula and give you the TLDR. Based on the formula, if your weight, speed, terrain, and incline are the same, meaning you're just changing your distance and pack weight, distances have a greater impact on your energy levels, meaning you'll exert more energy carrying a 20-pound pack for 20 miles than you would carrying a 30-pound pack for 10. And this is super important to know because the secret to spending less energy on the trail over long distances is buried in this concept. But we aren't quite there yet, and there's a few other things we have to dissect. So let's take a quick look at how much more energy you would spend hiking the same 20 miles with 20 pounds on your back versus 30. According to the Pandolf equation, you would spend an extra 15% more energy hauling that 30-pound pack. The basic reasoning is that your body weight remains constant. So although going from 20 to 30 pounds increases your total pack weight by 33%, the overall increase on the weight you're carrying isn't as much because you also have to factor in the weight of your body. However, to be very clear here, that is certainly enough to notice. I don't know about you, but when I've fully drained my hiking tank for the day, if you had asked me to put in another 15% of effort into my day, I'd probably rather stab myself with my own trekking pole. But a 10-pound weight difference, that is a huge amount of weight in your pack. So let's get a little more granular here. I found the increase in marketing pressure to swap out my perfectly functioning tent for something that's, say, a pound lighter and costs $300 more can really make me question my kit. Even though I talk about this a lot on my channel, I am certainly not immune to that pressure, especially those bigger and more expensive things that I have a close relationship with, such as my sleep system or my bag. My base weight is typically around 12 pounds for most trips. So let's say I'm obsessing over those last 2 pounds. If we use the Pandolf equation to compare a 2-pound difference in pack weight, you're using 1 to 2% more energy to go those 20 miles. That breaks down to around 20 to 60 extra calories for 2 additional pounds in base weight. And I did a little bit more hiker math here. 60 calories is the equivalent of 13 Cheez-Its, which is about a handful, and weighs around 0.5 ounces. And this tracks in my experience. I'm frequently dumping 2 pounds out of my pack when I backpack. I cache water in the desert quite often, and water weighs 2.2 pounds per liter, plus the weight of whatever vessel I'm using to cache. When I do this, I notice the decrease in weight, but it's definitely not making or breaking my day. I just shed 2 pounds from my bag. I feel like a whole new person. Actually, that's not true. So where is the tipping point with pack weight? The answer is at about 5 pounds. This equates to a 6% increase in effort, and you need roughly 125 more calories in your day, which is definitely noticeable. And increasing your food weight increases your pack weight, and then things start to snowball a little from there. So a 10-pound base weight, meh. It's more like plus or minus 2.5 pounds, or a 5-pound difference, which leaves you at approximately 7.5 to 12.5 pounds. But we still haven't answered the ultimate question. What has the greatest impact on your ability to have a big mile day and feel less tired? However, in order to fully answer that, we have to take one huge step back to uncover that thing that'll take 6 pounds out of your pack weight, and look at the origins of ultralight. From there, we'll put all the pieces together. Ultralight backpacking was born in the 1980s from Jenny and Ray Jardine. Now, unsurprisingly, Ray typically gets all of the credit, but it was really Jenny who pushed Ray away from climbing and into the thru hiking world. One thing that the Jardines brought to the table is that they are both extremely creative and innovative. They did a lot of making their own gear and really had a grassroots approach to shedding weight from their packs. It's important to keep in mind when they started thru hiking, a 50-pound pack was totally normal. And the whole ethos of backpacking was, if you aren't prepared for all eventualities, you'll be prepared for none, which today sounds stressful. Their philosophy was really simple. Raven stated, quote, "If I don't have it, I don't need it." We improvised, which is a very admirable characteristic of the ultralight community and one I focus heavily on here on the channel. In 1992, they were asked to publish their methods in a book called the PCT Hiker's Handbook. Now, of course, I got my hands on a copy of this book, and I read it. There were a few interesting notes. Ray states, goals are to be contrived. Of themselves, they do not exist. What exists, though, are dreams. His opening points are quite clear. And nowhere in this 200-page book does he ever mention a 10-pound base weight being any sort of goal. There are a lot of sections of this book, but one of the biggest ones is weight of your kit. And in this section, he outlines in order the essential ethos behind taking weight out of your kit. Number one is swapping gear for skills, meaning you can solve a lot of problems with knowledge instead of stuff. And this makes backpacking an ever-evolving sport that you can grow into all the time. It also happens to be a huge hint for how to exert less energy on the trail. Creating a cohesive system is number two, meaning you don't solve one problem with one piece of gear. Instead, you bring gear that can serve multiple functions. They all work together to give you a better experience and expend less energy. Number three is using group gear, meaning that if you're in a group, seeing what you can leave behind because the other person has it. Obviously, if you're solo, this doesn't matter. Number four is carrying less. Also, only committing to redundancy when it is a life safety issue, i.e. something like water filtration. And then number five is reducing the weight of each item. Literally the last thing on the list. And this is where late-stage capitalism has entered the chat and, quite honestly, ruined it. But don't fret, I'm not going to jump on that soapbox today. This philosophy resulted in the duo going from a 50-pound bag to 8.5-pound packs. And as we learned with Pandolf, this would push the physical gains of the Jardines quite intensely in the I have more energy direction. However, splitting hairs about forking more money over for a UL headlamp that weighs 1 ounce less? Not so much. The book goes on to have a really in-depth and detailed section about making your own gear and modifying gear, and this section is largely where a lot of the brands started their designs for ultra lightweight gear, and it was extremely revolutionary for its time. I'm not here to argue that. However, overall, the book is pretty anti-consumerism and a complete 180 from today's world of ultralight, and that magical 10-pound base weight shows up nowhere. It actually can't be tracked to anything, at least not in the extensive research that I dove headfirst into. However, most people agree that 10 pounds or less is considered ultralight. Frankly, that number really means nothing. It was chosen for no reason and nobody knows who chose it. There's no science behind it, and the research doesn't even track for that being some type of optimal number for hitting 20-mile days. My take? It came from modern outdoor gear marketing, and it's a bunch of nonsense. Oh, to reach this very arbitrary number, you really need that $400 Ultra Grid bag. So if you want to join our special club, you need to pay up. The one thing everyone gets wrong about ultralight is that this concept of a 10-pound base weight is some kind of be-all, end-all. It's not. And in kilograms, it's 4.5 kilograms, which feels completely random. What is the one thing that has the greatest impact on your energy as a hiker? Well, the Jardines were onto something that had a tremendous impact on their energy, and it was their footwear. They were the first hikers to use running shoes instead of boots, and that might have been their biggest discovery to having more energy on the trail. A 1984 study done by the U.S. Army Research Institute found that 1 pound on your feet equals 5 pounds on your back. And a follow-up study in 1986 got even more granular. Results showed that you use 6.4 times more energy carrying weight on your feet compared to your back. So for all of the innovations that the Jardines managed, the biggest and most revolutionary was lighter footwear. In fact, if we do a little bit of math here, wearing boots that are 1 pound heavier than, say, runners of some kind actually cause you to lift an extra ton per mile. There's about 2,000 steps in a mile. Over the course of a 20-mile day, you're essentially carrying a fully loaded coach bus complete with people 1 pound at a time with you. If we roughly try to integrate the Pandolf equation in there, reducing your footwear weight by 1 pound has the same energy benefits as removing around 6 pounds from your pack. And we learned earlier that that's pretty significant. This was so revolutionary to me. No wonder my winter hikes feel like such a slog. Now you may say, well then isn't carrying an extra 5 pounds like carrying an extra bus worth of people? And the answer is no. The analogy can't flow both ways because you're lifting that 1 pound as opposed to moving it through terrain, and holding 5 pounds obviously feels a little bit different than holding 40,000. All right, time out. Before I get a ton of comments about footwear choices, no, I am definitely not suggesting you trade your boots for trail runners if your boots work really, really well for you. In fact, my footwear suggestions as an ex-professional gear rider are simple. Check out my video to get the best advice for footwear that nobody on the internet is giving you. But selecting the lightest piece of footwear for your desired and required level of comfort, safety, and support, that will have a huge impact on your exhaustion levels along the trail. It doesn't really matter what you're carrying on your back. Back to the Jardines. Their #1 core concept of ultralight is to replace gear with skills. And according to science, there is one skill that will do more than any $800 Dyneema tent is going to deliver. Any guesses? Pacing appropriately for your terrain. This was entirely surprising to me and definitely not the answer I was expecting at all. But when you break it down, it makes a ton of sense. There are 3 things you need to keep in mind when it comes to pacing. The most dominant factor of energy exertion in the Pandolf equation is grade and elevation change. That's because when the grade is flat, G is 0 and takes out a whole chunk of the equation. At a 10% grade, which is moderate for hikers, this increases dramatically because the grade is multiplied by speed and total weight of your system. At steeper grades, effort's more than double because of this relationship. Finding a consistent, slower uphill pace enables you to maintain dramatically high energy levels because the relationship between speed and energy is exponential, whereas the relationship between weight and energy is not. And this makes a lot of sense. 20 miles in the Rocky Mountains ain't the same as 20 miles walking through Kansas. The second biggest impact on the Pandolf equation is the terrain factor. But in order to keep the experiment really simple, we are comparing apples to apples, and we're assuming we will be hiking the same 20 miles. So we can't really help that factor. So we're gonna cross it off the list. And the third and still very significant factor is maintaining a moderate, steady pace throughout your hike. A consistent pace across your entire hike is more efficient than pulling ounces out of your pack by far. Let's take a look at a quick scenario. We know that having 25 pounds on your back versus 20 pounds means you'll be exerting 5% more energy throughout the day. However, if you have the same 20-pound pack, same terrain, same person, same 20 miles, but you're moving at a speed of 3 miles per hour instead of 2 miles an hour, you are going to expend 15 to 25% more energy going 3 miles an hour. This is because speed is squared in the Pandolf equation, meaning there is an exponential increase in energy usage the faster you go. In simple terms, slowing down to 2 miles an hour saves 3 to 4 times more energy than cutting your base weight by 5 pounds.
Whoa!
Not to mention, ultra lightweight hikers that are going faster are actually using more energy. Pace management is the most important skill you can utilize as a backpacker to preserve your precious calories. So what really makes an ultra lightweight backpacker? It's not a 10-pound base weight. Come at me. You cannot change my mind. Ultralight at its heart is a philosophy where if you're deciding to compete with anyone, you're competing with yourself. It is a place where you bring together everything you've learned about backpacking and you have a higher emphasis on skills than you do with the gear you're carrying in your bag. Let me explain. Say, for example, you're in your late 60s. You have been backpacking for decades. You have your speed dialed, your systems dialed, you know what you're doing. Your body has changed though, and those adventures are so much tougher because your recovery looks a lot different than when it was completely non-existent in your 20s. On the one hand, having your bag be as light as possible certainly is going to reduce some of the stress on your joints. You aren't packing it unless it's utterly essential at this point. But in order to recover properly at the end of a long day, you need a chair. The entire UL community grows quiet. Their eyes start to glow like the embers of a dying campfire. You see silhouettes of pitchforks glowing under the moon. Collapsible ones, made of carbon fiber, of course. Are you no longer welcome in UL circles? You are committing that cardinal chair sin after all. Heck no. Why? Because you're still following an ultra-lightweight mindset, the core concepts that the Jardines innovated, and you are drawing upon your skills to be able to carry that extra pound, which only really equates to a maximum of 30 extra calories to do so. Taking a critical eye to your kit to be as efficient as possible is certainly in the ultralight ethos. However, your skills and your systems are at the heart of what is going to make you hike further and use less energy. Trimming weight by swapping out random items in your kit for lighter ones is simply icing on the cake. It makes the cake taste, well, better, but the cake without tons of added fondant decorations is still a cake. I didn't even get into the nitty-gritty details of balancing all of this with your budget, the environment you backpack in, your personal needs and preferences, etc., etc. Why should a bigger person be excluded from ultralight because their clothes weigh a bit more? A mom excluded because her body is different after birth? Aging people because they need tools for recovery? Ultralight is not about fitting some specific mold of a perfect svelte 20-year-old who can sleep directly on the ground and eat cold noodles for 4 months. It is not about being required to choose from the same 5 sleeping pads and small batch of packs. It's about honing your backpacking skills and craft to be as efficient as possible in order to maximize the energy you have at the end of the day. Base weight is one way to do that, but it actually doesn't have as great of an impact on your ability to hike further and feel better than other skills. Level up your skills and optimizing your footwear will have you feeling exactly like an ultra lightweight backpacker, even if your base weight is 14 pounds. That's all for today's deep dive, folks. If you've got a backpacking or hiking topic you want me to pull back the curtain on, then pop it down in the comments below. And I'll see you out there. Happy adventuring!